All right, guys, there's kind of an art to doing scouting, what I would consider to be the right way in Football Manager, right? You can't really necessarily just like go after every single guy that the computer tells you about, even if your scouts say that this guy's really good or this guy's really bad or, whatever it is that they say. So I'll show you a little bit more here about kind of what my plan is. In general, the idea that we have is we want to get young players. The philosophy behind this is that there is a pipeline. Ideally, we want to have a really good under-19s team. We want to have this filled up with players. This guy, I see, should be on the B squad. He actually is. Don't know why he's here. Whatever. Weird things happen. This guy should go to the B squad because really every player who is 18 or over should be on your B squad as far as I'm concerned with this game. We want to try to fill this up at the bottom with as many good 15, 16, and 17-year-olds as we possibly can. That does mean that we're going to look around for players to bring in who are that age. Now, there's a problem because sometimes the players just simply can't come in, and sometimes they're reluctant to because they're so young. But ideally, you want to bring as many of those really young players in as you possibly can. Play them in the under-19s, and then when they're either too good for this team or they turn 18, then you turn them over here to the B team, right? And really, this B team should be made up of guys, mostly the players you have who are on loan, or also guys who are 18 or 19 and who are not quite good enough to hit the first team yet. That's kind of what's going on. These are the guys, this is sort of like our lone army combined with a bunch of older players where I'm like, whatever, I have no room for you anymore. And that's kind of what we have on this team. The idea is that the B team is either players who we're waiting to develop to see if they ever get to the point where they can compete for a first team spot, or they're players that we're just going to move on, right? Now, a good young player who's maybe just a little bit off of first team level, but who has a lot of promise is going to end up directly on the first team. And so you can see here, we do have a bunch of guys who are 15 and 16. I don't care how young or how old they are. We're going to play them if they have that type of potential and if they're showing that they're able to play at that level. That's why guys like No Trong Yan is playing so well for us. The reason why he's playing excellent ball and the reason why we have him on the first team is because he has the ability to do it. Sure, he might be operating at a level right below where we are currently, but this is only orange. It's not red, which means that he's not too far off, and he's very exciting and shows a lot of potential, right? And so because of that, when we've played him, his ratings actually have been pretty good in the matches he's played in so far. That's a great thing, right? That's a great thing because then we can have this player as a good squad player. He won't be too upset if there are a couple matches he doesn't play in. He plays in the first team and he can get some good experience in at a very early age, and then he can be a substitute off the bench or whatever it is we need him to do when we need him to do it. So that's kind of the idea. It's sort of a funnel. Ideally, we would love it if we could get as many players as possible to come in at this level, but that's not always possible, right? Sometimes they have to be like when they're 18 is when they're finally willing to come over. Then we want them to move up to this level and be either part of the loan army or be right on the cusp of things and go straight into the first team. That's the idea. That's kind of the way that we want this to work, and that's the idea that we subscribe to. The other thing is, I've said time and time again, is players who are inconsistent or who are injury prone are not players who belong on our squad. Really, players with negative personalities also count. So when I see Unambitious by Oh Sang-jin, I'm like, that's not good. But at this level, since we're at the beginning of the save, it's going to be okay. We can take players who don't have the best personality. We'll play with them, no problem. As the save progresses, this is going to become a problem. Oh Sang-jin is not going to be on this club long term, but he might be able to do something for us in the short term, and then hopefully we'll be able to cash out on him and make a whole bunch of money from him, right? So the reason why I say this is because when we go look at the scouting update and the stuff that it shows us, you'll see pretty quickly that there are a whole bunch of players who are not going to fit in with this overall plan. We do have money, so we have almost 3 million euros in transfer budget. We have almost 50,000 a week in open wage budget because of the way we've been managing this, right? This is part of the idea. We want to keep all sorts of room open financially, and we need to work on building our reputation, winning more games. I need to have a better reputation and so on, so that eventually the really, really good young prospects are going to look at us and actually be willing to come over. If you watch the Mars FC save, you notice that after a while, some of the best, like 16-year-old players in Taiwan were starting to think that they wanted to come over to our team anyway. And it's because of the high reputation that we had. So this does prove to be successful if you do it long term. So you look at this guy, In Xinyu, who's over at Changchun. He's 17 years old. The age is right. That's about what we're looking at. He's slightly interested in coming for us. The problem is this deep red inconsistency. We could put out like a little bit of money for this guy if we really wanted to. I mean, he wouldn't cost like anything at all, and his wage expectation is really low. But because of that dark red inconsistency, he would never be like a significant part of the squad. There's no way I'm going to give a lot of playing time to a guy who's going to be that inconsistent. It's just not going to happen. So because of that, forget it. We're not going to play you. We're going to go on to the next. Now, I bring all of this up because of this scouting update. We're going to go through this together, and I'll explain why it is we're not going for these guys. So here we have a 32-year-old experienced midfielder, Danny Drinkwater, who's English. I mean, we could look into him. It's not going to tell us very much about him. His career stats, this guy's been all over the place, right? Playing in the Premier League, at least the Premier League is defined here, and was at Reading most recently. They were looking to put him on loan, and he didn't have anywhere to go. This guy's 32. I mean, if he came in, he'd probably help the dynamics a little bit. He'd be a good leader, but there's no other reason for us to care about this guy, so we're not interested in him. Let's look at the next one. Leo Mikic. He's 25 years old and a winger. Again, this is the sort of player that you bring in, to sort of booster and bolster up your wing, but he's not part of the team. He's not part of the plan. He doesn't fit in that well. When it comes to that, I'll look then at this here. So the guy's not 30 plus and like declining. I look over here and I say, well, what is it that our coaches say? If this is not A or A plus, I don't care about it. I'm going to say no, because the money, whatever it costs to get this guy, could be better spent elsewhere. Same thing here with Flavio Ramos. Flavio Ramos is wanted by a whole ton of teams, right? 28-year-old center back. He's Brazilian, which, as everybody knows, means that he's the greatest player in the world or something like that. And we go over here to transfer status. We can see all sorts of other Super League 2 and Super League 3 clubs are interested in this guy, right? Which tells you sort of what his talent level is, right? He'd be interested in coming on over. He'd want kind of a high wage. I'm not so sure I want to spend that much money on this guy. He's 28 years old. We have 28-year-old foreign players on the squad. I mean, there's no reason for us to want this guy, so we're not interested in him. Now, here's Harley Dean. Look, a center back with 31 years old. We need center backs, but again, you look at this guy who's kind of bounced around most of his career. I mean, we're getting like the tail end of this, right? I don't see any reason to spend time or money looking after him, so I say no to that. Robinho, 25-year-old attacking midfielder who's wanted by a couple of other teams who are mostly below our level. This is another guy where it's like he could come in, probably be okay. He wouldn't cost that much money, but again, we probably could get more bang for our buck. We say no to him. And last but not least is Gerson Torres, who's from, what is this, Dominican Republic? Is that right? Costa Rica, I'm sorry. See, I'm not so good at anything in the Americas. He's only had 4 substitute appearances this year playing for Herediano. And I mean, see, he's got an A-, so maybe we would look into him, right? They're thinking he'd be third best on the right wing. Now, we don't need a right winger. We need somebody who can play wing back. I guess he sort of could play wing back, right? I mean, I don't know. This is one of these guys where I'm like, I mean, the problem that we have, and he's listed for almost €1 million, which is a little bit expensive. I mean, the problem that I have is that this guy's not really playing one of the positions that we have. The other problem I have is that we're only giving him an A-, right? So if I wanted to look at this guy, let's just say that I did, and we'll go ahead and click through this as if I did. I mean, it's okay. We can have our scouts look at him. What I want to do is I want to fully scout him first, right? And then we'll go back over here. We'll make sure that he ends up on actually, we don't need him on the short list quite yet. The reason why we want to fully scout this player is because we can't see a lot of stuff. He might have a deep red inconsistent thing, right? Sure, he might have the ability to play for us, but with inconsistency like that, and since he's a player clearly of the level that we're at right now, this guy's not going to be like a superstar, right? So that's sort of the way that we look at this, right? I'm looking for A+ guys, and mostly guys like in their mid-20s who could improve a little bit. That's sort of like the maybe that we're looking at. Even still, I'm likely not going to go for him because he's not South Korean and he's not East Asian, and that's kind of what this save is designed to be, centered around. So, I mean, I don't think that we're necessarily going to go for this guy, but, we might take a look at this and give him a chance. Again, the reason why we don't want a whole bunch of guys who are like 28, 29, 30 is because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who are that age already on the squad. We need to move these guys on. And look at this. 1, 2, 3 of them happen to be foreigner. Actually, Osmar is no longer a foreigner. I think he, if I remember right, he is South Korean and Spanish. So he now has South Korean nationality. So it's fine. We're not going to worry too much about him. He's definitely gone native. Right. But, Yurchenko is a sort of signing that we want to stay away from. Right. I think I showed this before. Right. He came over like a season or so ago. Not the sort of player that we really want to be building around. We won't want to have a whole bunch of talent coming in from the outside. And, this is a guy who's 30 something years old who we're going to give a second shot to or whatever. That's not the way that we build. Again, the philosophy that we build under is we want to get guys who are young, up around this age at top, maybe even 20, someone who's like that, maybe 21 at the max, bring them in and then have them become part of the system and have them sort of earn their keep with the system. And then by the end, if they're not going to work out, then we let the computer come and take them off of our hands. If you do that, you'll notice here with the wage budget, those types of players don't ask that much in wages. You can avoid paying $22,500 for Yurchenko. He just had 2 goals for us, so he's okay. But you can avoid having these kinds of salaries, which means over in your finance screen, you've got more money to put in the transfer budget, which means that you can pay more money for more good young players that you can then bring into the system. So that's the whole idea behind this. The idea is that you kind of move from one thing to the next like that. Anyway, there you go. That's what my philosophy is. I'd love to know if you have any other thoughts about this or any other things that you'd recommend doing or that you think are worthwhile. In the end, the goal kind of is to have a development center where the B squad and the under-19 squad are both strong teams with nothing but positives, and you have a whole bunch of first-team candidates here, and you have no place for them because your squad is filled with good young players who are all competing for the same position. There was another FM YouTuber who... this is back in FM21 territory when I started taking this seriously. Well, seriously. There was another guy who said that ideally you want to have 3 players at least at every single position on your first team, one of which should be a young player who's competing for that slot. And then if, say, the board sells a player out from under you, it doesn't matter because you have at least 2 other guys competing for that position. Plus, your B team is filled with guys competing for that position. Plus, your under-19 team is also filled with guys competing for that position. I mean, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get the machine going so that we're cranking out talent, and then when the computer comes and pays big money for players, it doesn't matter because you have the next talented player already at the club. That's the idea. That's what we're going for. Anyway, talk to you later. Take care. Bye.